We are back live on the ProfitRx, the podcast, which is all about taking out the financial pains out of medical practices with Josh Fertel, who's our expert. Billing, RCM, revenue optimization, finding ways to generate more revenue. It's all Josh. Josh, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Vivek. How you doing today?
I'm doing good too.
That's good.
So, Josh, today we're
Yeah.
going to talk about cash flow, a lot of cash flow, which you love. Uh, so let's dive in. What's the ideal billing reimbursement cycle for a healthy practice, and how far off are most clinics from that reality? Because I'm sure you bump into every single day and you discover
Yeah.
something.
No, the ideal scenario would be this. Once a visit is signed off on 24, 48 hours max, that claim we submit to the insurance companies and the clearinghouse. We try to do it in 24. Every once in a while, it'll go to the next day, but never more than 48. At least that's the way we do it. So 24 hours to get it submitted. You should be paid by the insurance company within 21 days if you've done everything correctly. Okay, if the demographics are all set, if the codes are all set, if we've scrubbed it correctly, 21 days you should be paid. You send out a statement if there's a deductible or a copay that needs to be collected that wasn't collected up front. You get that within 30 days. So I would say really 40 days, 45 days, that claim should be zero on the books. That's ideal. Does it happen that way? It certainly doesn't. Everybody uses buckets and they say a 30-day, 30 to 60, 60 to 90. Ultimately, you don't want things going past 90 days. So if you have claims that need to be fixed or if there's something wrong with the information that was put into the system and it needs to be redone, that's gonna make a 2 or 3, 4 week difference in your cash flow. So we try not to let that happen. It does happen. It happens with everybody. But within 45 days, really a clean claim should be done and patient should be collected if the patient's payments were collected up front within 3 weeks.
3 weeks. And what's the impact when, let's say, insurance payments are delayed? Let's say 30 days, 60 days. What happens?
Yeah. I mean, it's impacted two ways. Number one, your cash flow is hurt no matter what, maybe a little bit, maybe a lot, whatever the significance is. But for anything that you're not paid, let's say within that same month, it's going to affect your cash flow. So you have payroll, you have rent, you have all the things that you need to pay for. We want to get our money as quick as possible. And the second thing that it affects is the ability to collect. If you're sending a patient a statement and they're not paying it after the 30 days, they've already had the service has already been done. So if they're not paying after 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, you know, how are you going to be able to collect it? And how much time has to be put in to try to collect that? So that a lot of times will either go to a collection agency or it might just get written off. So the longer something goes, the chances of collecting it go down significantly. That's why you don't really want things to go too long. And, even in a perfect world, 60 to 90 days, everything should be done and, off the books. But
And
effectively.
where do the biggest slowdowns happen? Is it like the front desk errors, coding, poor follow up? Where is the cash getting stuck?
You know, I'm gonna. My answer to this question is this: it gets stuck in communication, right? I'm not going to sit here and point to one thing or this thing or that thing because it's a combination of everything. And I'll give you a great example of this because we have a client last week. We just went through this, and they're a dermatology, and they have cash pay patients like dermatology will have for cosmetic things. And they had a patient that came in and it was just a routine appointment and they charge $100 or whatever it is that a practice charges for a cash pay visit. And they ended up having to do a biopsy. Okay. So there's really two services that were done. The office in the exam room never told the front desk that a biopsy was done. Patient walks out, paid their $100, doesn't know that they have an additional cost that's coming. So can you send them a bill and say, oh, here's another $100 that you owe, or whatever the number is, and the patient will say, no, I paid you, And so it really is just communication. So how did this patient leave without the exam room doctor, the provider, letting the desk know that there was additional service done? It's all communication. You can't really just blame it on one person. And, if providers are paid for, you eat what you kill type of thing, there's money that they're losing by just not taking an extra 2 seconds and letting know that that extra service was done. Certainly, coding will take an effect, making sure that the diagnoses are on the right codes. We run into that a lot. Many providers will just list all the diagnoses on every procedure they did that day. So we have to go through them and make sure the right ones are on the right procedures. And then, follow up. Of course, you're never going to be perfect. You're never going to get 100% the first time, right? So the follow up is super important. I mean, that's, most of my team is all they do is follow up. The submitting part's basically the easy part, and the follow up is, separates the men from the boys, so to speak. And so that's what we try to do.
And when your team is doing this follow up, is it more you're relying on technology, or is it like you're making calls to follow up? How does that work on your end?
I would say most of it's technology because every payer has portals. So we log into their portals and see what was wrong and what needs to be fixed. It will come down to phone calls, sometimes depending on the payer and how much technology they provide. But the bigger, Medicare and Blue Cross and United, all that, they all have portals that we go on, put the information in, and we see what the holdup is.
Now I want to ask you something that's a bit more debated, and we've talked about it a lot. So there are practices that go completely cash based because they are done with insurance headaches. And you can understand from the physician's point of view. And then others that take every insurance for volume because that's how they build a business, right?
Right.
So where do you stand personally? Like, what's your honest take? How to go with
honest take?
Yeah.
If I was a provider opening up practice, I would be cash only. Period. You don't worry about reimbursements. You don't worry about being rejected. You don't worry about cash flow. You make sure you have your practices in place where you're collecting every time that somebody comes in. I mean, that's the absolute best way to do it. Logically, if you want to grow right now, 2025, you have to take insurance because that's how you're going to grow your volume. So if you're brand new, right, you're just starting out and opening up your doors, and you want to be just cash only, it's going to take a while for you to grow your practice, right? You have to find the demographic. Where are you located, right? The location is important. Are you located in a place where there's, people can pay cash for showing up, and it's, not have to worry about insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, whatever it is. So where you are is probably the biggest thing, where you open up shop. But if you're going to grow in the beginning, you need to be able to take insurance. You need to be able to take Medicare and Blue Cross and United and all these things to just get the practice up and running at least. But if I had my choice, cash. Simple as that.
And I know you as a company, do you support cash-based practices? Because you mentioned dermatology practice. So what do you do there for the cash who are kind of like both?
Yeah. So, every practice is both, right? Because 25%, 30% of your income is coming from deductibles and copays. So every practice is hybrid, and you have to think of it that way. We have practices, like I said, a dermatology clinic that does, cosmetic things are going to be cash pay, and we don't get involved in that. We do track the numbers for them, but we don't even want to get paid. We're not doing any work there, so we don't get paid on that. And good for them. Let them do that. And when you have a lot of practices now that are out of necessity, I believe, offering services that are not covered by insurance. And, they could be IV or weight loss or counselings and things that are paid by cash. And I think it's great. And I encourage it because, it helps with cash flow. Any money you can get same day is perfect. So every practice is hybrid. It has to be, and you have to think of it that way.
Yeah, I think for you, how you're explaining it now, I said, oh yeah, from your end, the copays are cash, kind of like
The
cash.
co-pays are cash.
Yeah, it's cash collection. Even though on the practice side, it's a different thing because you can't build a volume just on cash. The patients who have copay only come because they have insurance.
Right.
So
That's exactly right.
yeah,
And it would be hard. It'd be very hard to start a practice that's just cash pay. It really depends on where you are. If you want to grow, you have to grow, with, right? And then from there, then you can start to decide, well, you know what? This contract doesn't make sense to me. Actually, personally happened to me myself. My doctor, I have Blue Cross. My doctor said, we're not taking Blue Cross because of the reimbursement. So that's up to me. Do I want to continue with him and pay cash, or do I need to find another doctor? And that's from personal experience. So no, I'm not the only one.
why do you think like practices who are, I mean, like you said, everybody needs now having this second stream of income, which is
Yeah,
a good thing, which is
yeah.
a good thing. So, but I guess couple of questions. One is like, ideally you want every practice to have that multiple streams, right? Because you don't want to be reliant on just one thing. That's diversification for them. And the second thing is, if somebody is switching to cash based model from purely insurance based, what should they absolutely like think through before even making a decision?
Well, the first thing you have to think of is which patients am I going to lose? You're going to lose patients, right? Which ones am I going to lose? How many am I going to lose? And how is that going to affect? And then are my insurance patients going to be able to make up that difference? You don't want to go backwards in revenue, right? Just speed up cash flow. You want to keep the revenue going and keep the cycle. I mean, make sure first that you're doing everything you can to have a tight, revenue cycle with your insurance. Right? Make sure, am I going to cash because I don't like the way, I'm getting paid, or I'm not getting paid enough? Look in the mirror first. Make sure you're doing everything, if your billing team is doing everything they're supposed to do before you say, okay, I have to go cash because this is not working out. So look in the mirror first, make sure you're doing that. Then you're going to lose patients. How many are you going to lose? Is it, 5%, 10%, 20%, 50% of your practice? Are they going to go to somebody else because, they need to pay by insurance? And that's the biggest thing. And that's why when, we say the word hybrid, let's, instead of going 100% to cash, let's figure out ways to bring in extra money on the patients that we have through these additional services. Um, what else, can be offered, as an incentive to a cash person? You can offer a concierge level subscription. Say, okay, we're going to take your insurance, but also we're going to be your concierge. And if you pay X number of dollars every month, you have access to the doctor's cell phone. We'll give you a longer appointment. We block off time every day. So if you need a next day appointment, we'll do that, create that kind of service. So now really you have both things going on, and do things like that instead of just, saying, I'm going to cut off and I'm going to go cash, because it's going to be a disruption in your business.
And how much do you think practices are doing this thing? What you said, like add this, like a membership over there.
It's becoming popular, and I always, recommend it. I was like, here's a thing, that you can do. It's becoming popular. Now, then you have to service it that way. You can't just say, okay, you're a concierge and everything is the same, because that'll upset people and make them leave, for being unhappy. So what are you going to do? What services are you going to supply to earn that X number of dollars every month? And, not having to wait for an appointment is probably the biggest thing that I can think of. Direct access to the physician is probably the biggest thing. Those are, things that you have to plan and schedule for. Have an open block of time perhaps every day, and see if it fills up, and just, maybe it's 1 hour, maybe it's 2 hours as you progress, that kind of thing. Longer appointments, instead of having somebody in the office for 15 minutes or a half hour, maybe if they pay in the concierge, they'll get 45 minutes of your time for the same things that, value adds, right? Value adds what you can service to for that. But it's a good plan, and, easy to implement once you really decide what it is that you can offer.
It still becomes a math equation, right? Because what will happen is this will take away your time from the insurance patients. And now the question is this like, it's confirmed revenue. That's great. But then it limits your volume on insurance side. So which path do you pick? You still have to solve that equation for yourself.
Everything in life is a math problem to me. Everything is a math problem. And you can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to do this and start it tomorrow." You really have to look at your patient roster and say, "Okay, this person would qualify, this person would qualify." Maybe don't offer it to everybody at one time. Start with who you think would benefit the most and offer it to them. You know, services, the extra services, IV fluids, a lot of these things that are going on now, stem cell. Somebody proposed to me the other day. These are all, cash offers. They're not covered by insurance. Yes, stem cells still, um, not covered. So, look at your extra services, look at the concierge model before you just say, okay, I'm not taking insurance anymore. Because that's a drastic change. That's a drastic change.
Would you prefer it seems like you prefer before you make all the changes, let's look at what additional thing on
Right.
top of it you can add, and that creates a better mix. How much you as a company play that role? Because I know you do more than any normal RCM medical billing company. So talk about you. How do you intervene there and help the practices?
Yeah, I encourage it, and I don't mind doing the groundwork for somebody to do the research or introduce them to somebody that's done it before and has connections to do it. Uh, I want however it takes for our clients to be profitable and thrive. I don't care how it comes. I'm going to get mine anyway. My piece is going to come. So why would I not want to share that? And the better somebody else does, the happier they are with us. And they just say, thank you for introducing me to this. It made a difference. I have a client now where we introduced them to a service, and I think it's now 20% of their income every month. And it's no working. It doesn't matter. I'm going to get my tiny little piece anyway. Why would I not want them to do so? If I have an idea, if I see something that looks interesting, I share. We communicate everything to show, that I saw this, somebody did this, somebody used this EHR, it was a lot less. They saved money here. Somebody did this with this contract. I try to spread it around to all of our clients.
How are you kind of keep up? And this is something like sharing your secret, right? Like, how are you keeping up with, finding those ways that you can be indirect value add to your customers from your side by making these introductions, these ways? How do you keep up with all these things? Where are you finding these from?
you know, um, Social media is perfect. LinkedIn is perfect. If you have, 6,000 LinkedIn friends that are in the healthcare space, somebody's going to come up with an idea that you didn't think of before, and everybody's going to jump on the bandwagon. So I read a lot. I read a lot, and I get a million newsletters in my email every day. I don't read all of them, but I do pick and choose. If the subject title says, "Well, this looks interesting," I'll read it. But practices, I mean, you learn so much. I learned things that we can do better just by following people that are in my profession or people in healthcare. There are a lot of people a lot more knowledgeable than I am that and everybody shares the information, which is nice because I think we all think it's us against the big companies, and I think everybody has that same attitude. And so if there's a way to get that little extra pull of the tug of war, then it's good. It's good for everybody.
And I know you are attending local business events in your area, and I saw this wonderful presentation that you gave more recently. But is this also in your billing world? You have these kind of events, any events that you go to? Can you talk about those, if any, with providers or with your other peers in the industry?
I don't really go to a lot of. I should go to more events than I do. I yeah. I don't have a good answer for that question.
That's okay. Yeah, look, I always feel like modern day, um, I've been a big believer that from a marketing standpoint, I've been a big believer that, for long in healthcare, we've made this conferences, trade show, great,
Yeah.
right? It's great to connect. It's very great. But my biggest war on marketing side on all these things is, well, I'm not willing to spend 15 grand just to just go there for putting a booth there or rent, like it's so expensive, right? So it makes it like, again, this thing like, oh, now we have reached that point where all these things are expensive so much, right? So this is why this is why I actually created, like, podcast is the way to network. Let's do it at your own terms, not only content and wisdom, but also network. So what's your view of that? How you want to leverage that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I am still a big BNI person, and I do go to networking events there. And I never really appreciated the power of, LinkedIn, for example. And once I started, learning, I mean, somebody taught me how to do it, how to engage people and how to provide content. It's ridiculously better, and less time consuming. But there is work, like any networking or anything like that. Building a business, it's marketing. It is work. You have to set aside the time every day to engage. And I get back as much as I give. I've gotten clients from LinkedIn. I've learned a lot from it, and so, to physically go to things, I should do more. I can go to more, but I don't. Um, you know, I should go to more.
Next time, you and I both will go wherever
Yeah.
that will make it happen. All right, so let's say, hybrid model, right? This is somewhere in between both cash flow and revenue. This is what we want to do it.
Right.
Is there more like the less cash based, like in general practitioners, could you tell one or two things that have really, really like flew for your clients? It was like really worked nicely. Is there one or two things that was like, oh, do this before you do complete cash flow?
Yeah. Um, the biggest thing now, right, is weight loss. So a lot of times it's not covered by insurance, I guess, depending on the patient. That's the biggest thing. It's all over the television. And if you have somebody that has the means and the desire, a patient to go through that, that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing. And that was a blessing to family practices. Was is Wegovy, whatever it's called. It was a blessing. So when you have those kinds of things and IV, you know, drips and all these extra services that do provide value, but are just not covered by insurance, you just incorporate everything that you can, that you have the ability, logistically to incorporate. And there's no, don't worry about, I don't want you to spend a lot of money to get these things, right? I don't want to have like the burden of outlay of money. Let's think of things that are easier to get into financially, that'll pay off the reward. And then as it grows from there, and you find yourself with some extra, extra dollars in the bank because of what you're doing, you say, okay, let's try this new thing. Then you do it. That to me is the hybrid model. You're either one in or out as far as being cash pay provider or an insurance provider. But there's so many opportunities there, and you have to weigh the cost of doing these things. Also, do you need extra, extra staff to do these? But you have to sit down with a pen and paper and just do the math and see if it works. It's going to work, but you just have to do it the right way.
How much do you see, like, again, this is, I know, like, everybody wants new revenue stream. Are they on to you all the time asking you like, hey, how do we add something new? Josh, tell us about it.
Yeah.
That one.
I usually will serve it up. The question I get most about additional revenue comes from more the insurance side. It's like, what codes should I be using that I'm not using? And we try to actually give that before the question gets asked. But when they do that, what other services, should I be doing this counseling, this counseling, this counseling? Are these codes good, or is there a better code to be used? Am I undercoding? Am I undercoding? So when we look at revenue on the patients that we have now, it's really, are we using all the codes that we're supposed to be using? Are we doing the timing right? We had a client that switched EHRs and the new EHR was defaulting to a 99202, which is the least level, um, visit that you can have. And this again was in the dermatology field. So there's no way somebody's coming in for a consult and it's less than 15 minutes. So it took us like a couple of days, and we called. I was like, "Why are you doing all these 99202s?" And I said, "Oh, we're not." And so, it's that kind of thing. So it's just keeping eye on the codes to make sure that everybody, you're getting the maximum return for the work that you're doing.
Do you personally, I guess, hate it or like it when they ask the question about coding? Because I feel like a lot of time they just view it as, oh, you're just medical billing. So I'm just going to ask you a question about code. And they can't even think that, oh, I can actually discuss with you other problems. Like, hey, maybe I can use the space better. Maybe I can have, different kind of staff that will help me. So how do you
Right.
engage that? Like, how do you get to that part of the conversation?
That comes just from, at the end of the month, right? We'll always have a conversation with the practice at least once a month. We'll have a conversation, say, okay, how did we do? How did you do? Are you happy with everything turned out? And just by asking open-ended questions, you're going to get answers. What are you concerned about? I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be with us. I need another person. I don't have another person. I don't like my front desk person. Uh, what else can we be doing? And then the conversation goes from there. So it's like I said, 45 minutes ago, communication is the whole key, right? And that's, not to do a plug, but that's what I talk about with my team. We need to be the best communicators. Right? We need to ask the questions and get the answers to everybody. And if we're the best communicators, we're going to be the best company. It's just as simple as that. The rest is just math, right? But you have to be a good communicator.
It's such an important point. At the end, what you're saying is billing is probably the easier part because you know what to do that.
Right.
But if you're not aligned, if you're not able to like communicate exactly what you need or what they need, this is like this business doesn't work that way because it's really based on really constant communication loop.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I hate when I hear that we have this extra space that we're not doing anything with. I mean, okay, let's figure out what we're going to put there. If we could do this, we could do this, we could do this. Here's the people I want you to talk to. You feel them out, make sure you're comfortable with them, and then let's make it happen. Don't no extra. You can't be any extra space. Maybe the broom closet. That's about it. Other than that, it has to be generating. Every inch has to be a revenue generator of an office.
Yeah, I wonder if I should start thinking about my office like that. Every piece should generate that. That would be good.
No, you're paying the same amount of rent, right? No matter what, if you use one office or two, you're paying the same amount of rent. Every room has to generate income.
Yeah. So I know we touched upon this specific thing that, physicians are physicians. They're obviously, that's not their core competency and medicine
Right.
is what it is. But
Sure.
how often do you see like, when do you, like many physicians will treat cash flow as like afterthought until it is too late, right? And is it, do you see that often or are you seeing more physicians to be more, more, savvy about their cash flows? Where is the trend right now? Because you're deep into trenches. Tell me about that.
Yeah. I would like to think that we make them more aware of their cash flow. Uh, I can't speak for anybody that uses a different outsourced company or worse, in-house, right? Because if you're in-house, you have no outside influence, right? It's only what you know that you're passing on to your employees. When you have a second set of eyes on something, that's where the opportunities present themselves. And so I'd like to think I love when a practice owner knows their numbers. I love it. Some people will be afraid of it, because they're watching everything, but I love it. It's an easier conversation to say, okay, here's what you're doing. I think if we do this, it could be a little bit better. I think if we cut this, I think we could save some money and put some more money in your pocket at the end. Those are my favorites. So yes, I'd like to think that all the practices that we service are financially savvy and we help make them that way.
That's nice because I don't hear much, like at least from the notion that I get on the other side when I speak with a lot of physicians. believe it or not, like I am not even in your business, but a lot of time when I go in, I come from the marketing angle, and then I'm discussing stuff, and then my question always go to this line like, oh, so talk to me about where are you spending money and how are you getting patients, and then it opens up business model, and then we going and discussing, oh, I have a membership model, and I also do telemedicine, so I'm actually I I start the conversation from marketing, but somehow it's always ends up where you are at too, like business model,
Yeah,
right?
but it's all about the conversation. That's all it is. Somebody, when I get referred to somebody, I was like, okay, well, I don't give them like, here's my PowerPoint of what I do, right? Let's just have a conversation and just see where you're at, see if we're a good fit. And if that goes well, if that conversation goes well and we seem to like each other at that point, then we'll go to the next step. But you have to have a conversation first, and see where somebody's, what they're thinking.
What interesting thing that has popped up for me for last couple of months is a lot of physicians have asked then me counter like, oh, can you help us like what model we should do or how? I'm like, look, I'm not in your business. I can only tell you from shared knowledge, like
Right.
what I'm learning from the industry, right? So I thought of like, oh, there's a big gap in this area of like just educating people how to create second, third, or fourth revenue streams in your practice. Everybody knows the first route, like go insurance, that's clear at least for now. But after that, it's just like a wild, wild west. Nobody knows, should I do membership? Should I do this treatment type? And I always thought like, oh, uh, maybe I should bring more in this context and partner with all these physicians who are doing great work, just share their case study and create like, this is how it works for this specialty. This is the route they took. This is what it is. Are you kind of building any of those kind of like playbooks that you think like in the future you'll be able to give it to like, here it is, go to our course. This will guide you through it. How are you thinking about it?
Yeah,
Or anything
that's
you're thinking?
that's a great question, and now I will start doing that. I haven't before, but that's see, this is what you have a conversation, you come up with a great idea, to really put down a paper of what I think are the best practices. We have certain things that we think benefit all our clients. Chronic care management, of course, being probably the biggest one because that helps everybody, patients and doctors. Um, so that's our lead as far as somebody that isn't doing it that wants to, create more income without doing any work, literally. Um, but yeah, I'm gonna come up with a playbook.
Yeah, and I really think like because it's just like so many times like everybody it's everybody is I think physician goes through this cycle, right? Like they do come out of the med school, they go to the hospital, then they're working, and then they make the first stride, oh, let me go insurance only practice, which is a good step because you want to build the brand and the volume, and then afterwards like, oh, what next, right? I'm still
Right.
stuck in the cycle, right? So
Yeah.
and that's where I'm seeing like, oh, okay, yeah, you're asking all these great questions, but and but you're also telling me 10 things you want to do, which is like, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. I
like,
mean, when you're first starting out, you really I think you can't limit yourself to one thing, right? You have to grow your volume of patients, right? You have to. And from there, you know, like any business, right? You can look at your return on investment. What am I getting out of this client or this patient, this insurance company? Is it making sense? Am I losing money? When I go into the room where I can replace it with X, or if I see one cash payment instead of three insurance payments, you got to do the math. But in the beginning, you really have to give yourself the opportunity to make those decisions, which can only be by having a volume of patients in your list.
now, again, without naming anyone, is there a practice in that's like killing for you? And you're like, man, these guys are awesome. They do everything that they need to do. This is like, they are making so much money. I wish I can tell everyone they should be doing this. What is that specialty in your world? Is there any, I guess? And what is their specialty? And what is like one or two things they're doing like really special that blows your mind away?
Good one. The ones that engage their front desk correctly are my favorite. And those are the ones that are always doing better, which is, it's kind of, I don't think it's anything that you would think of, how important that front desk is. And the ones that engage them, not with you make sure you collect everything, but again, let them know, understand the value of the service that the patients are getting, what the practice is providing, so that they feel like, this is important what we're doing. And you can't just go to the supermarket and not pay, right? So you can't come here and not pay. It's just, you have to just have that mentality. And so instead of like, getting mad at them for doing it, embrace, right? Embrace this person, buy them, like I said, buy them some Starbucks, and make sure that they appreciate what's going on. So the practices that do that are really the ones that where cash flow is not really a question, right? They're covering their bills, they're making some money, and then it's just a matter of, okay, what else can I do? What's the next step? And I always look at the prior month and the prior year as to what we collected for them, and was it higher? Was this month better than last month? And I love it, and I make sure I make a note. We beat last month, we beat this month, we went backwards a little bit this month. Let's figure out why. You go on vacation, what happened, and just keep comparing. And I just want, goes up, goes up, goes up. Honestly, the more higher everybody goes up, the more that we get our little piece of. So we want everybody to make as much as possible. But the ones that are the practice owners, the physicians that are really engaged, those are the ones that do better. And it doesn't come down to specialty. It just comes down to, the philosophy of who's running the ship.
Wow, this is very interesting. I didn't think that would be the answer. I would think that, this specialty is kind of like where it works the smoothest. So,
there are specialties, if you have surgery center or if you have physical therapy, right? The dollars you can't compare. But, in those worlds, who's doing a better job, right? So I don't want to compare specialties and say this person's doing great, because the reimbursements are different and the number of patients you see are different. But who's doing the best with what they have in their own sandbox? That's the way I would look at it. And it really is where the providers engaged in what's going on, and they're just not letting it happen, good or bad.
you see, in your clientele, do you have clients also where there's a non-physician owner, where you have to work with them, like a CEO who's not a doctor, and versus the physician owners? Do you see a big difference on the other side doing much better, one or the other side?
I don't think there's a difference much better. The non-provider CEOs, they're all about the math, and again, that's my favorite. They're going to, see where the improvements are. They're going to call us out if they see something that's not working. I'm okay with that. This is how we get better. So I like that. I like dealing with somebody that's not a provider. They're not, as we always talk about providers that don't have time to look at their business because they're working with patients. These are people that are not really looking at the patients. They're just looking at the business, good or bad. I like working with them because, I'm on the business side. I don't know how to cure anybody. So I just got to do my part.
Yeah, I like that. Okay, cool. And before we end today's conversation, again, if someone on the practice side, if their margins are shrinking and their payments are slow, what's like the immediate remedy Josh suggests them? Like, hey, what are the things do you look, and what's the immediate remedy that you can suggest them or they should look?
You have to look at your receivables and see how old they are, right? We start with a conversation, 40 days, 45 days, right? That really should be the benchmark to have everything done. Less than that, but I'm talking about patient deductibles that need to be collected. If things are starting to go past 90 days, that's where you're really going to start, leaking money. So you have to look at your receivables first and see what's out there from insurance and from patient, both of them, not just one or the other. And if you see something that doesn't look right, reach out to somebody. If you have a colleague, just have them get another set of eyes on it. And maybe somebody can see something that's just glaring, that's an easy fix. And sometimes it's just an easy fix. I've seen practices where the biller didn't bill anything for 30 days. And he was wondering why, he wasn't getting paid. I was like, well, took 4 seconds. You let me see your EHR. It's been a month since anybody built anything. It's simple as that. So they fixed the problem. They didn't hire me and moved on. But that was all right. That's all right. I'll get the next one.
Now more on a personal set.
Yeah.
When you are picking up these clients, is there a certain type of client where you some, of course, your ideal clients where it's to work, and you mentioned things about physicians is like engaged and savvy. At what point you say yeah, I won't be able to take this client, not because you can't add value, you can still add value, but is there any other thing that makes you feel this is not going to work well?
That happened to me last week. I got a call from a person, non-provider, who was in New York, I believe, and wanted to open up a telehealth only practice. They hadn't formed a company yet. They didn't have an NPI, didn't have EHR, didn't have anything, and said, when can I get started? Had no contracts. I was like, dude, you're nowhere near. So to me, this was a money grab. And as soon as I knew that, I kind of ended the conversation. This is not somebody who's trying to make people healthier. This is somebody who's just trying to make some money. And I don't have too much interest in working with somebody like that. And that is a true story.
Wow, thanks for sharing. It's like one of those things, right? Like I was speaking with a friend of mine, MBA guy, and he's like, he gets ideas like this. He just comes up like, oh, we can make money on this thing. I was like,
right.
You're like, what is this? This is not like, you're not trying to do, you're not selling shoes. This is different. This is healthcare. It makes some sense like that. But it's funny how it works. But great choice there. I like that answer a lot. Well, this has been incredible. Once again, great episode. Lots of insights. Thanks to our listeners. It is actually our most popular show at the moment on Top Health. The ProfitRx, believe it or not, it's like ahead of physician shows.
Nice.
so it looks like more physicians hear this or checks out. So that's a great sign.
That's great.
But Josh, again, it's like you are the secret recipe. You are the expert. Everything that you share, that's the content that's going. So appreciate you taking the time. Thanks for another insightful episode of the ProfitRx.
I enjoy doing it. I have no issues sharing anything that I know, whatever it is, little bit that I do know, and that's my whole philosophy.